Have you heard somebody say, you really ought to have a living trust, but you kind of wonder to yourself, well, what the heck is a living trust anyway? Hi, I'm estate planning attorney Mike Smith with Smith Barid LLC, and I'm one half of the estate planning guys. So to begin with, a living trust is an estate planning document. So it's a way to help plan for what happens when you die or if you become disabled. And a living trust has certain benefits that are not available in any other type of estate plan. The first one is privacy. So if your living trust is set up and named properly, then no one knows exactly who owns the assets. The trust owns the assets, not you, so your name is not associated with the assets anymore. So that gives you privacy during your lifetime. And when you pass away, if a living trust is set up properly and funded properly, then it doesn't have to go through probate. Probate is a court process that happens when most people die, if they have a will or they have no plan at all. And probate is a public proceeding, like all court proceedings in the United States. There is a file down at the courthouse with a copy of the will, a recitation of who the beneficiaries are, and there may be an inventory of the assets in the estate, etc. So it's a public process. With a living trust, we don't have to go through that probate process. It's unnecessary. So there is no public proceeding when you pass away with a living trust. Therefore, your family gets privacy, and you got the privacy during lifetime because your name wasn't on any of the assets directly. So let's talk about the key features of a living trust. First is that it's revocable. That means you can change it anytime you want to. All you got to do is pull out a piece of paper and a pen and you can make the changes. Now, I recommend you meet with your attorney to make the changes, but you could do it yourself if you wanted to with something as simple as a piece of paper and a pen. The second thing we've already talked about is privacy. Number three, a living trust avoids probate. Now, I've mentioned that already, but there's two types of probate you need to be concerned about. The first one is what happens when you die. When the estate needs to be resolved after you've died, there's a process called probate, but there's also a type of probate that can happen during your life. It's what we call a living probate. And that happens if you become incapacitated. So if you become mentally incapacitated and someone needs to step in and take care of your assets for you to manage your financial affairs and maybe take care of you personally, there's a process called guardianship or conservatorship. I refer to it as a living probate. So it happens during your lifetime. It also involves the probate court. It's also a public proceeding. And basically, one of your family members has to file a petition with the court saying that you've lost your marbles and you can't take care of yourself anymore. And then they have to go prove that to the court. It is a time-consuming process. There are statutory requirements around notifying people and who needs to sign off, and you have to get an evaluation done by a psychologist, and there's a court hearing and all those things. So it can take a lot of time and it can be very expensive. And if there ends up being a dispute about it, whoa, hold your horses. There can be a lot of expense involved in that sort of thing. So generally, you want to avoid a living probate if you can. And a living trust, that's one of the benefits of it. We avoid that living probate process. Now, setting up a living trust can be relatively simple. You meet with your attorney, you tell them how you want it set up, the attorney drafts all the language, and then once the trust is set up, you got your red bucket, the living trust, then you got to get your assets into it, and that's called funding. Sounds really complicated, but most of it involves things like you talking to your financial advisor and telling them, hey, I want you to put my accounts into my living trust, or going down to your bank and signing a change of ownership form on your living trust, your life insurance, etc. I did other videos that are all about funding your trust, so if you want to learn more about that, look for those videos on YouTube. So if you're interested in learning more about how we help families protect their legacies from probate, predators, and government intrusions, I wrote a free book titled The Ultimate Gift that lays it all out. If you'd like to pick up your free copy of The Ultimate Gift, simply click the link below, give us your address and a credit card for shipping and handling fees, and we'll ship it out to you free of charge. Read The Ultimate Gift so you can learn how to protect your family. There are a couple of misconceptions about living trust, and so let's address those right up front. One is that it avoids probate. Well, wait a minute. You said it avoids probate. Yes, it does avoid probate, but it has to be set up right, and you have to keep all your assets in the trust. So that is incumbent upon you to make sure if you acquire new assets that you get those funded into the trust as soon as possible, so that if something happens, they're in the trust and taken care of. And the second thing I think that's a misconception about trusts is that they're super expensive. Well, does it cost more to set up a trust than to do a will? Absolutely, it costs more because it's more complicated and more time is involved. There have to be more meetings and that sort of thing. But The reality is that if you do a will and it's a cheap will, it still has to be probated when you die. And the probate process takes longer and costs a lot more than a living trust administration. So the cost ends up being almost exactly identical, whether you have a living trust or you have a will. It's been great to talk with you today about living trust. If you'd like to make an appointment to talk with us about your living trust, click the link below to schedule a free discovery call with my team and find out if we can help you.